Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. President Donald Trump holds a cabinet meeting at the White House where he says he does not want Somali immigrants in the United States because they add little to the country, rely on government safety net benefits, and complain too much. The president calls Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Democrat from Minnesota, a Somali American and U.S. naturalized citizen, garbage. And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says he did not see any survivors in the water when a second strike was ordered and launched on a boat allegedly carrying illegal drugs in the Caribbean Sea in September. Secretary says the boat exploded in fire smoke. You can't see anything. This is called the fog of war. Supreme Court hears a case contending that faith-based anti-abortion pregnancy centers in New Jersey deceived clients and donors by suggesting they offered abortion referrals when they didn't. Senate leaders discuss plans to vote before Affordable Care Act health insurance enhanced premium tax credits expire. And billionaires Michael and Susan Dell donate over $6 billion to put $250 in the individual investment accounts for 25 million children, an extension of the Trump accounts created under the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill signed into law earlier this year. From Axios, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth struck a defiant tone Tuesday, telling reporters during a cabinet meeting that the military has only just begun sinking narco-terrorists to the bottom of the ocean. Trump administration has rallied around Hegseth following a report that the military in September conducted a second strike on an alleged drug vessel near Venezuela to kill any survivors, which legal experts warn could violate the laws of war. The White House said Hegseth authorized a Navy admiral to conduct the strikes, which the administration argues was within his authority and the bounds of the law. That was from Axios. Secretary Hegseth spoke during a presidential cabinet meeting at the White House. Here's an exchange with a reporter. You will also hear from President Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Mr. President, thank you so much for taking questions with your assembled cabinet. I wanted to clarify something that you had said on Sunday regarding the boat strikes near Venezuela. You had said that you didn't know if the second strike on that one boat had happened, but you wouldn't have wanted it. Now that your administration has acknowledged that it happened, do you support that second strike? And Mr. Secretary, I want to clarify something you had said in an interview back in September, I believe on Fox News. You said that you had watched that strike live on television. In real time, did you know that there were survivors after the initial strike?
Well, look, all I know is this. Every boat that you see get blown up, we save 25,000 on average lives, 25,000 lives. They've been sending enough of this horrible fentanyl and other things like cocaine and other things, but fentanyl right now is the leader of the pack, to kill our entire nation. Because a little speck on the head of a pin can kill somebody. It's very dangerous stuff. I know so many people where their sons were drug addicts. They had one little sample, and they died. They died. They couldn't believe it. As far as the attack is concerned, I still haven't gotten a lot of information because I rely on Pete. But to me, it was an attack. It wasn't one strike, two strikes, three strikes. Somebody asked me a question about the second strike. I didn't know about the second strike. I didn't know anything about people. I wasn't involved in it. I knew they took out a boat. But I would say this, they had a strike. I hear the gentleman that was in charge of that is extraordinary. He's an extraordinary person. I'll let Pete speak about him. But Pete was satisfied. Pete didn't know about second attack having to do with two people. And I guess Pete would have to speak to it. I can say this. I want those boats taken out. And if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea. And there's very little coming in by sea. I think we've knocked out over 90% of it. There's very little, and I understand that. There's very little. We're saving hundreds of thousands of lives with those pinpoint attacks. It's an amazing thing when you see a boat going along. And, a lot of the press would like to say they're not. You see the boat. They're not maybe drugs. You see these boats. First of all, who has 5 engines on the back of a boat? Going in weird directions and loaded up with lots of white containers. They're bags of things. No, they've done an amazing job, and Pete has done an amazing job. Pete, you could probably better answer the question.
No, you're spot on, sir. I think you got to start with the baseline, which Marco laid out. Everybody's laid out. You got 20 million people invading our country over 4 years. We don't know where they're coming from. That includes Tren de Aragua and cartels and violent criminals. They bring drugs, and you mentioned it, Mr. President, poisoning, an intentional poisoning of the American people, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. So the president had the courage to designate these cartels as designated terrorist organizations. Now, a number of us here served in the military and spent 20 years fighting terrorists like Al-Qaeda and ISIS on the other side of the world. How do you treat Al-Qaeda and ISIS? Do you arrest them and treat them, pat them on the head and say, don't do that again? Or do you end the problem directly by taking a lethal, kinetic approach? And that's the way President Trump has authorized the War Department to look at these cartels. And I wish everybody could be in the room watching our professionals like Mitch Bradley, Admiral Mitch Bradley, and others at JSOC and SOCOM and other commanders. The deliberative process, the detail, the rigorous, the intel, the legal, the evidence-based way that we're able to, with sources and methods that we can't reveal here, that make sure that every one of those drug boats is tied to a designated terrorist organization. We know who's on it, what they're doing, what they're carrying. All these white bales are not Christmas gifts from Santa. This is drugs running on motor fast boats or submarines that we've also struck. No one's fishing on a submarine. And I have empowered them to make that call. Now, the first couple of strikes, as any leader would want, you want to own that responsibility. So I said, I'm going to be the one to make the call after getting all the information and make sure it's the right strike. That was September 2nd. There's a lot of intelligence that goes into that, building that case and understanding that. A lot of people providing information. I watched that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do, and by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back, and the American people are safer because narco-terrorists know you can't bring drugs through the water and eventually on land if necessary to the American people. We will eliminate that threat, and we're proud to do it.
So you didn't see any survivors, to be clear, after that first strike? You personally?
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand. You sit in your air-conditioned offices or up on Capitol Hill and you nitpick and you plant fake stories in the Washington Post about kill everybody, phrases on anonymous sources not based in anything, not based in any truth at all. And then you want to throw out really irresponsible terms about American heroes, about the judgment that they made. I wrote a whole book on this topic because of what politicians and the press does to warfighters. President Trump has empowered commanders to do what is necessary, which is dark and difficult things in the dead of night on behalf of the American people. We support them, and we will stop the poisoning of the American people.
And Mr. Secretary, on the second strike, you said it happened more than an hour after the first. Did I hear you correctly?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of time.
Minutes, or you went left the room, is what you're saying.
I already stated my answer quite clearly.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and President Donald Trump during a cabinet meeting today at the White House. The Hill writing that Navy Admiral Frank M. Mitch Bradley will provide a classified briefing to the senior members of the Senate and House Armed Services Committees Thursday about the Trump administration's controversial strikes on Venezuelan boats suspected of smuggling drugs. Bradley was authorized by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to order a follow-up strike on September 2nd against survivors who were clinging to the wreckage of the targeted boat, an action that has triggered an uproar in Washington. Bradley, who was head of the Joint Special Operations Command at the time of the strike, will brief the chairs and ranking members of the Senate and House Armed Services panels on that and other incidents, according to a source familiar with the matter. The Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, told reporters Tuesday that senators are looking for more information about the incident. He said the committees of jurisdiction, the Armed Services Committee, has asked for a briefing by the appropriate administration officials, and I assume will attempt to get all the facts surrounding what happened with that incident. That's reporting from The Hill. More reaction to what's been going on from Congressman Ted Lieu, Democrat from California, House Democratic Caucus Vice Chair, at a news conference.
Now I'd like to talk about war crimes. Last week, Secretary Hegseth lied and denied media reports that the U.S. military ordered a second strike on defenseless shipwrecked survivors. Then yesterday, both the White House and Hegseth said actually it was Admiral Bradley who ordered the second strike. I served on active duty as a JAG for 4 years and then an additional 21 years in the reserves. And let me be very clear, killing shipwreck survivors is a war crime. The Pentagon's own Department of Defense law manual on the law of war literally says that, quote, orders to fire upon the shipwrecked will be clearly illegal. The Department of Justice must conduct an investigation into the war crime and hold all those accountable, including Secretary Hegseth. He allegedly said, quote, kill them all. If the Trump administration does not hold the people accountable, I guarantee you a future administration will do so because there is no statute of limitations for war crimes.
Congressman Ted Lieu, Democrat from California, the House Democratic Caucus vice chair at a news conference today. On the U.S. Senate floor, the Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, said that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth can clear up any confusion about his role in the September double missile strike by releasing the recording of the attack.
In the past few days, more questions have arisen about Hegseth's order to attack alleged drug trafficking vessels off the coast of Venezuela. It is possible those strikes, which may have included verbal orders from the Secretary of Defense to, quote, kill everybody on those boats, violated the law. But this is the problem. The American people still don't know exactly what happened because Pete Hegseth refuses to tell the truth. Months ago, right after the strikes, Hegseth went on Fox News and bragged. He was present at every moment of the operation. He said on Fox News that he, quote, watched it live. He said the same to us in person. But then last night he tweeted that his admiral was actually the one who made all the combat decisions. This is so spineless. Pete Hegseth won't hesitate for a moment to talk a big game and take credit if he thinks it makes him look good. But the minute trouble arises, suddenly Hegseth says someone else was making the decision. Now let's be very clear about something. There's a very easy way for the American people to get the truth. Pete Hegseth should release the full tapes of the September 2nd attack, both the first and second strike. Not a clip, not some edited or redacted snippet. The full unedited tapes of each strike must be released so the American people can see what happened with their own eyes. Now, Pete Hegseth says he did nothing wrong, so prove it. If it's true, he should have nothing to fear from the truth. But if he refuses to release the tapes, if he stonewalls, if he keeps hiding the facts, then the question becomes unavoidable. What is Pete Hegseth hiding? What does Pete Hegseth not want the American people to see? Is it that his story doesn't add up? We don't know, because Pete Hegseth is right now hiding the truth.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on the Senate floor. ABC News writing that former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted in 2024 of trafficking drugs into the United States, has been freed from prison after he was granted a pardon by President Donald Trump, officials said. The 57-year-old Hernandez was released from a federal prison in West Virginia, where he had been serving a 45-year sentence, according to a spokesperson for the Federal Bureau of Prisons and Hernandez's attorney, reporting from ABC News. From Associated Press, outlets that reach millions of news consumers are being denied access to rare briefings by Pentagon officials this week, sessions that are being held instead for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's hand-picked media organizations. Hegseth's team says the briefings are part of a special orientation for a newly credentialed Pentagon press corps, consisting primarily of conservative outlets that agreed to his new rules for operation. Most mainstream outlets exited the Pentagon this fall rather than agree to the new rules. That was from an AP article. Today there was a news conference with Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson, who brought up the change in her opening remarks.
I would also like to take a moment today to welcome all of you here to the Pentagon Briefing Room as official new members of the Pentagon Press Corps. We're glad to have you. Legacy Media chose to self-deport from this building, and if you look at the numbers, it's pretty clear why no one followed them. National trust in these mainstream media outlets has cratered to 28%, the lowest ever recorded. The American people don't trust these propagandists because they stopped telling the truth. So we're not going to beg these old gatekeepers to come back, and we're not rebuilding a broken model just to appease them. Instead, we're welcoming new media outlets that actually reach Americans, ask real questions, and don't pursue a biased agenda. The public has moved on from the old model, and so will the Pentagon. This is the beginning of a new era. We look forward to working with you to keep the American people informed and to ensure transparency.
Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson, part of her opening remarks at a Pentagon news conference today. This is Washington Today. From Fox News, the House Oversight Committee has opened a probe into Governor Tim Walz's handling of a massive relief program in Minnesota that federal prosecutors say devolved into the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in the country. Chairman James Comer, Republican from Kentucky, said in a statement obtained by Fox News Digital, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was warned about massive fraud in a pandemic food aid program for children, yet he failed to act. Instead, whistleblowers who raised concerns faced retaliation. Because of Governor Walz's negligence, criminals, including Somali terrorists, stole nearly $1 billion from the program while children suffered. That was from the article at Fox News. President Trump, at his White House cabinet meeting, was asked about the governor and the fraud.
No, I think that Walz is a grossly incompetent man. There's something wrong with him, okay? There's something wrong with him. And when you look at what he's done with Somalia, which is barely a country, you know, they have no anything. They just run around killing each other. There's no structure. And when I see somebody like Ilhan Omar, who I don't know at all, but I always watch her for years. I've watched her complain about our Constitution, how she's being treated badly. Our Constitution, the United States of America, is a bad place. Hates everybody, hates Jewish people, hates everybody. And I think she's an incompetent person. She's a real terrible person. But when I watch what is happening in Minnesota, the land of 1,000 lakes, or however many lakes they have, they got a lot of lakes. But this beautiful place, and I see these people ripping it off, and now I'm understanding, and you're going to look at that's good. I hear they ripped off Somalians, ripped off that state for billions of dollars, billions, every year, billions of dollars, and they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too. I can say it about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. You know, our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. You know, they came from paradise, and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from hell, and they complain, and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it.
President Donald Trump at a White House cabinet meeting today. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Democrat from Minnesota, came with her family, granted asylum in the United States in 1995. She became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 2000 when she was 17 years old. Today, she quote tweeted the president's comments, adding, "His obsession with me is creepy. I hope he gets the help he desperately needs." Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat, answered a reporter's question today about all this while he was visiting a small business in Minneapolis advocating for paid family and medical leave benefits.
There was a post out this morning from the Treasury Secretary about Minnesota dollars being investigated and possibly going to a terrorist organization. Can you respond?
Yeah, well, we welcome any help on this, but I think everybody in this room is smart enough understand when the President of the United States sets up and tweets 150 times after midnight and targets certain people, it's not a coincidence that they're targeting Minnesota. We certainly welcome those investigations. They've been done by all of you, and they've been done here. We certainly want to know that, but it's also the Transportation Secretary who is threatening to withhold our federal dollars. Look, that's who they are. This is who they are. We welcome anybody who wants to help us. We're fixing it. And I said, Minnesotans know us and our team. We led us through COVID. We led us through George Floyd. We brought our economy to one of the best in the country. And we'll tackle this. Other governors have dealt with fraud. I want to make sure I'm the last one that has to deal with it by putting these things in. If they want to help us, I welcome that. I think they do an investigation, find out. But I don't think anybody in here really believes their motive and their timing is about actually doing something about this, much like the legislature. They had every opportunity to do investigations. They had every opportunity to do their oversight. They chose not to. The very legislatures that are required to do an audit have not done their own audit. The very legislature that has Republican legislators accusing other Republican legislators of fraud in the PPP program, the federal program. So, again, my message is simple on this. You commit fraud in Minnesota, you're going to prison. I don't care what color you are, what religion you are. Anybody who wants to help us in that, we welcome that, but setting on the sidelines and throwing out accusations, and let's be very clear, demonizing an entire population and lying to people about the safety and security of this state is beneath that. And I will just add, as a teacher and as a parent, the absolutely pathetic usage of a slur, not to me, I don't care what he calls me many things. But don't think that doesn't hurt our children. Don't think it doesn't hurt people who are dealing with this. And this is not normal. It's not both sidesism. We're solving problems. We're making life more affordable. We're talking about bringing people in, and we're getting this.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat, holding a news conference at a small business, a deli in Minneapolis. He was there to talk about paid family and medical leave. He also announced in September he's running for re-election in 2026. That would be his third term. And that slur he referred to from President Donald Trump was in a post on Truth Social a couple of days ago. New York Times writes the Trump administration is launching an intensive immigration enforcement operation primarily targeting hundreds of undocumented Somali immigrants in the Minneapolis-St. Paul region. According to an official with knowledge of the operation and documents obtained by the New York Times, the move comes as President Trump has fixated on Somalis living in the United States, using increasingly inflammatory language to attack them. He stepped up his rhetoric in the wake of last week's shooting of 2 National Guard members in Washington, even though the man suspected in the attack is an Afghan national. That was from the New York Times. Republicans on the U.S. House Oversight and Reform Committee today passed a bill to require a U.S. citizenship question be added to the U.S. Census starting in 2030 and to limit apportionment, the allocating of the congressional seats and also the presidential electoral college votes every 10 years across the 50 states, only to the population of U.S. citizens. Congressman Andy Bigg spoke in support of the bill before the vote.
Districts with large non-citizen populations overwhelmingly elect Democrats. That's just the way that is. Districts with high citizenship rates overwhelmingly elect Republicans. That's fact and data. Of the 24 congressional districts where at least 1 in 5 adults is not an American citizen, only 4 elected a Republican in 2022. And meanwhile, in the 54 districts where non-citizens make up less than 2% of adults, only 5 are represented by Democrats. Pattern is not accidental. Non-citizen populations cluster heavily in deep blue urban areas, inflating population totals and giving Democrat districts more representation in Congress than the citizen voting population truly warrants. Non-citizens cannot vote. Take a look at Section 2. The basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear in the whole number of male citizens, etc. These are things in Section 2 of 14 that are basically the arguments that were made in that convention are borne out by the facts I'm giving you now. Non-citizens cannot vote, but they are counted the same as voting citizens during apportionment under the current scheme. That means districts with fewer actual voters gain more political power despite having fewer Americans participating in elections. And let's just consider my home state. After years of litigation, 15 Arizona counties, and we only have 15 counties. We've got, some of our counties are bigger than states, bigger than New Jersey, etc. But these counties are verifying and removing up to 50,000 registrants who never provided proof of U.S. citizenship. There are up to 50,000 people in my state alone who have failed to provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote. Imagine that number nationwide. That doesn't even include the number of people being counted in our census who are here illegally.
Congressman Andy Biggs, Republican from Arizona, during today's House Oversight Committee markup. Congressman Maxwell Frost, Democrat from Florida, opposed the bill.
I oppose this blatantly unconstitutional bill that violates the 14th Amendment. Putting a citizenship question on the census would increase fear in immigrant communities and decrease the number of responses, undermining the entire purpose of the census in the first place. America's democracy values representation, and it's important that we have a census that is actually on point, since the population count determines how many U.S. representatives each state gets. Congress is supposed to represent everyone, every human, every person, but this bill dilutes that power for our residents. This bill would have huge financial consequences, as census data guides the allocation of $2.8 trillion every year. So I'm fighting for my district, for Central Floridians, and for the state of Florida to get the tools that we need to succeed, not fewer. If enacted, this bill would cause states with large shares of undocumented immigrants, like the state of Florida, to see significant federal funding cuts. This means all Floridians see our public goods close and fall into disrepair, such as roads and transit systems, schools, hospitals, veterans care, and disaster preparation. Republicans in Congress claim to respect the Constitution, but to respect it, you got to read it. And like the ranking member just said, it says very blatantly in Section 2 of the 14th Amendment that we count the whole number of persons in each state. No matter what this president says, no matter what Republicans in Congress say, a person is a person. Immigrants are people, and they should be counted in the census. I yield back.
Congressman Maxwell Frost, Democrat from Florida, before the Oversight Committee passed this bill 20-19 along party lines, sending it to the full House. The full House passed a similar bill in 2024, but it did not pass the Senate. This is Washington today. Washington Post writing, New Jersey Attorney General Matthew J. Platkin, a Democrat, issued a subpoena in 2023, part of an investigation into whether a chain of faith-based anti-abortion pregnancy centers were deceiving clients and donors by falsely suggesting they offered abortion referrals. First Choice Women's Resource Centers Incorporated quickly sued in federal court. The broad request for donor information and other material chilled its First Amendment rights and was an act of intimidation by an official hostile to the group's views on abortion, the organization said. Tuesday, the Supreme Court appeared sympathetic to First Choice's argument, which is backed by other religious and anti-abortion groups and also by some free press advocates. The threat of disclosure was enough to make donors think twice about giving to the group, several justices suggested. Reporting from the Washington Post, here's part of the oral argument before the U.S. Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Roberts questioning Sandeep Iyer, Chief Counsel to the New Jersey Attorney General.
Counsel, you referred to the fact that you've addressed these subpoenas to car dealerships and things like that. Your friends on the other side don't represent a car dealership. Do you think there is a credible chilling effect from the state seeking full names, phone numbers, addresses, present or last known place of employment of every one of their donors who gave through any means other than the one specific website? In other words, do you think they have a credible chill concern?
I don't think that, and I think that's best illustrated by the allegations that are in their complaint, as well as in the supporting declarations in support of their motion for a preliminary injunction. So if you look at their complaint allegations, all of the harms they identified are tethered to a future downstream state court order requiring disclosure, but they're not tethered to the subpoena itself.
Sandeep Iyer, Chief Counsel to the New Jersey Attorney General, arguing before the U.S. Supreme Court, questioned by Chief Justice John Roberts. Case is First Choice Women's Resource Centers v. Platkin, and we covered it on the C-SPAN network, so you can find it at cspan.org, our video library. Arkansas advocate writing, although the country is more divided and democracy is more unstable than he's seen in his lifetime, former President Barack Obama said young people give him hope for the future. Obama shared his thoughts Monday on democracy, civic engagement, and understanding others during the inaugural conversation of Building Bridges, a new lecture series hosted by Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, focused on, quote, meeting in the middle with curiosity, courage, and care, according to a press release. Reporting from Arkansas advocate. Here's a portion of the conversation.
I think it is true that we are more divided and that our democracy is more unstable than any time in my lifetime, not in American history. I mean, you know, we did have like a civil war and stuff. I mean, there've been some pretty big, you know, breakdowns in the process. But I would say that the order, the system, the sets of institutions that were built after World War II and then refined over the course of subsequent generations, I think those are unstable in ways I would not have expected. I would not have expected the legitimacy of an election and the peaceful transfer of power to have been challenged. I thought that was not something that would happen today. I would not expect the politicization of the Justice Department or our military. And I don't think that's happened. I think there's been resistance, particularly in the military, to that. But the degree to which that has been encouraged, you know, that used to be something that I would lecture other countries not to do. You don't have your military involved in partisan politics. Its loyalty is to the Constitution. Its loyalty is not to any party. Its loyalty is not to any party, and it is not to any president.
Former President Barack Obama Monday night in Bentonville, Arkansas, at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, part of a new lecture series, Building Bridges. By the way, the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago's Jackson Park, scheduled to open spring 2026. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Hi, I'm Kate. Time's almost up. Make your Giving Tuesday gift to C-SPAN now. If you value unfiltered access to Congress, the White House, and the Supreme Court, don't wait. Give today. C-SPAN is nonprofit and viewer-powered. We don't take government funding. Your gift keeps democracy transparent for everyone. Donate before midnight at cspan.org/donate, and thank you.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast wherever you find your podcasts and on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, writes Politico, said Tuesday that while bipartisan discussions are ongoing around the fate of soon-to-expire Affordable Care Act subsidies, abortion restrictions are a major sticking point. The Senate is expected to vote next week on a proposal from Democrats to extend the ACA subsidies, but Democrats haven't yet detailed what bill they will put on the chamber floor. Republicans are separately working on a potential counterproposal that would come from Senators Mike Crapo and Bill Cassidy, chairs of the Senate Finance and Health Committees, respectively. Some of the reporting from Politico. Senator Thune was asked about this after today's Senate Republican lunch meeting.
After hearing from Chairman Crapo, Chairman Cassidy today at lunch, do you think Republicans will be ready to coalesce behind some sort of health care plan or alternative by next week's vote on the ACA subsidies?
We had a robust discussion on a subject that is a great interest, not only to obviously senators in the room, but the American people. And as I've said before, we want to move forward on solutions that will make health care not only more accessible, but more affordable to more Americans. That gives them more choices, more optionality, greater competition, and therefore lower prices. And so we continue to coalesce around those solutions. We had a good presentation today from a couple of our leading chairmen, Senators Crapo and Cassidy, thank you. and a lot of others that we heard from at the conversation we had today as well. So I think as we get into next week, obviously, as you know, the Democrats are going to get an opportunity to vote on a proposal of their choosing, and we will see where the Republicans come down, but that conversation continues.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, at a news conference today with other Senate Republican leaders. Senate Democratic leaders also held a news conference after their lunch meeting. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota called for an immediate extension of the expiring ACA premium supports.
When you, with your astute questions, ask our Republican colleagues about what they're going to do about this health care crisis, what do they say? We're having discussions. We're having robust discussions. The time for discussions is over. The time for action is here. They know the numbers. They know what's happening. This is a Donald Trump-created crisis. The premiums are doubling. The premiums are tripling. And the due date is next week. The due date is the middle of December. That's when these rates get locked in. And having just visited the final counties of all 87 counties in my state, I could not believe the people, when the press wasn't there, who brought up to me, what am I going to do? I can't afford the premiums. I'm a farmer. I barely have enough. The tariffs are hitting me anyway, and I'm going to have to buy these junk plans. I don't know if it's even going to work. That's what's happening. Trump and congressional Republicans are showing once again that they have no plan. They floated a plan last week, and I kind of thought they're in the middle of a blizzard in Minnesota. Well, maybe they're really mean this. Maybe they're really going to negotiate with us. Maybe they're going to actually do something. But no, quickly withdrawn because of their own internal fights. Americans want them to lower costs. They run the White House. They run both houses of Congress. And when you look at these exact plans, 75% of the people on these plans live in states that Donald Trump won. 27% of farmers are on these plans. So that's why you start seeing these cracks and people in the House and in the Senate, some Republicans saying, why don't we just extend these? And that is a really good question.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat from Minnesota, at a news conference with other Senate Democratic leaders today in the U.S. Capitol. The Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, was asked what exactly the Senate will be voting on next week, since the Democrats have the commitment from the majority Republicans to get a vote on whatever they want. It was a trade-off when enough Democrats voted to end the government shutdown a couple of weeks ago.
Democrats have promised the option to force a vote on the Senate floor next week on any health care bill if you're choosing. What bill will that be?
Stay tuned. We had a great discussion, and I will tell you this. We will be focused like a laser on lowering people's costs.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. More from the Politico article. There's also uncertainty on the other side of the Capitol about how Republicans will respond to the looming expiration of the subsidies, which could cause premiums to skyrocket in the new year. Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters at his weekly press conference that he didn't commit to a short-term extension during a closed-door House Republican members' meeting Tuesday morning, but that there will be a Republican response to this. Reporting from Politico, here's part of the news conference.
Two of your members came out of the meeting just now and told me that it was their impression that the House Republicans are likely to get on board some kind of short-term extension for the subsidies while you work out long-term reform. They weren't members who love that idea, but they said it looks like that might be necessary. Where do you think things stand, and could something come before the House by the end of the year?
I don't know who you talked to, but they might have left early. I was up there for quite a bit today. We were talking about a lot of issues, and what I said, we didn't commit to that. What I said is, when you have, this is just practical, okay? When you have a razor-thin majority, which we have, this is not like the old days. You know, in the old days, they had 30, 40-seat majorities, and so 4 leaders could go in a back room, create the agenda, and hoist it upon everybody and say, this is what you're doing. And if 20 or 25 people disagreed, they said, so what? Go jump in the Potomac. We're moving forward. Okay, it doesn't work that way, right? And when, in an era of small margins, I literally have to get almost every person in the room on board. Now, healthcare is a very complex issue. And I don't want to point this out. Look, it is not the Republicans who broke American healthcare. Next week, we'll go into this in real detail, and I'll show you the whole timeline. The Democrats broke healthcare, okay? When they created the Unaffordable Care Act 15 years ago, they promised you that everybody could keep your plan, keep your doctor if you want it, and that your premiums would be reduced on average by $2,500. Exactly the opposite was the truth, and premiums have risen in some cases 60-80% over that time. They broke the system, and every time the Democrats have gone in to try to subsidize the broken system. They've spent more and more taxpayer dollars, and they've been wasted. The COVID-era subsidy only affects 7% of Americans. Okay, all this hullabaloo is over 7%. Now, every American, 100% of Americans, need their health care costs to come down. Republicans have ideas to do that. Now, what I've got to do is build consensus deliberately around the best ideas, and we've been working on that. The majority leader has been quarterbacking this effort with the chairman of the committees of jurisdiction, with the Docs Caucus, and with individual members who this is their passion, and they really spend a lot of time thinking and working on it. And we're pulling those ideas together, and there will be a Republican response to this, okay? So I can't project in advance what that will be, because I don't know what the consensus is in that room, but you will see our sleeves rolled up and that work being done in earnest this week as we bring all that together. I told everybody we are going to respond. We understand the need of bringing down health care costs and at the same time raising access to care and quality of care. The Republican Party is the party that can do that. The Democrats have demonstrated for 15 years they broke the system, and they keep doubling down on the broken system, okay? Hey, and guess what? If you love your Obamacare, you'll get to keep it, okay? We're going to improve the system for Americans. We have good ideas to do it. We have a lot of thoughtful people working on this, and we'll be pulling it together. So, no, the answer is no, I did not project any outcome of this morning. We were talking about the various ideas, and we're working right now. People are very passionate about this, and they should be, because their constituents understand the necessity of it. So we'll keep doing that.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, at a news conference with other House Republican leaders. And you're listening to Washington Today. AP writes billionaires Michael and Susan Dell pledged $6.25 billion Tuesday to provide 25 million American children under 10 an incentive to claim the new investment accounts for children created as part of President Donald Trump's tax and spending legislation. The historic gift has little precedent, with few single charitable commitments in the past 25 years exceeding $1 billion, much less multiple billions. Announced on Giving Tuesday, the Dells believe it's the largest single private commitment made to U.S. children. Its structure is also unusual. Essentially, it builds on the Trump Accounts program, where the U.S. Department of the Treasury will deposit $1,000 into investment accounts set up by Treasury for American children born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028. The Dells gift will use the Trump Accounts infrastructure to give $250 to each qualified child under 10. That was from AP. The Dells joined President Trump at the White House. First, the president.
Trump accounts will be the first, I guess you could say, real trust funds for every American child, allowing family members, employers, corporations, generous donors to contribute money that will be invested and grow over the course of a child's life to be used for their benefit after they turn 18. So in other words, these are children that are going to, an investment's going to be made. That investment's going to continue to grow, we hope, right? We hope. And but it will, and they'll feel like Michael Dell someday. But at 18, they'll have a lot of money, a lot more money than they would have had, and potentially a lot of money. But these accounts will track the overall stock market and will be 100% private property controlled by the child's guardians. In honor of America's 250th anniversary, the Dells are announcing today that they are giving 25 million American children $250 each to save and to invest in their personal Trump account. Now, that's the equivalent of $6.25 billion. In other words, to put it succinctly, Michael and Susan are giving $6.25 billion in total, and as a total contribution. That's big stuff. I don't care who you are. That's big. Come here, give me a hand. Let me have a little of that luck rub off. That's fantastic, Susan. These gifts will be available to the first 25 million children aged 10 and under the zip codes where their median income is $150,000 or less. So they're giving them to children that won't be born particularly rich, and they're going to be hopefully very rich someday. This will give millions of dollars, millions of children, middle-class families a stake in American prosperity, a benefit from the rising stock market, and a better shot at the American dream. It really gives them a shot at the American dream. Michael and Susan, I want to thank you for this extraordinary act of kindness and patriotism and charity. This is truly one of the most generous acts in the history of our country. I mean, you don't hear about things like that, and we got to let people know he doesn't want and she doesn't care about that, but I do. I think when somebody does that, you got to let them know about it.
President Donald Trump at the White House. Michael Dell also made some remarks.
You know, when you pass the Invest America Act on July 4th of this year, we were really inspired to see that happen. And this is something that, Brad had first mentioned to us in 2021. We thought it was a great idea then, and it's amazing that it happened. And we also saw that this act would become a platform. And, we believe the smartest investment that we can make is an investment in children. And this act has created a platform for families and friends and communities and companies and philanthropists to contribute to these accounts to create a savings and opportunity and hope and prosperity for tens of millions of children in this country. And Susan and I are super excited to announce our $6.25 billion gift to 25 million American children, 10 and under, and our gift will cover most of the children that are 10 and under that are not part of the federal program, the 0 to 2-year-olds, and who also live in zip codes where the median income is $150,000 or less. And I have spoken with a number of other wealthy Americans, philanthropists, and we are confident that others will join us because we all understand the incredible impact that a gift like this can have on the lives of young Americans. So again, it's a great honor for us to be here to be able to announce this. When I was 8 years old, I got a passbook savings account and I had, I think, about $8 in it. And you go to the savings and loan and you give them a quarter and they'd stamp your account. And I got to see the power of compound interest early in my life. And that has brought me here to this moment. And hopefully will inspire that kind of opportunity for many more young people in this country. So again, thank you for the privilege of being here.
Thank you.
Michael Dell, a billionaire, along with his wife at the White House today, pledging $6.25 billion, providing 25 million American children under 10 with $250, part of the Trump investment accounts that were created in the One Big Beautiful Bill over the summer. More from the AP article. Though the Trump accounts became law as part of the president's signature legislation in July, the Dells say the accounts will not launch until July 4, 2026. Michael Dell said he wanted to mark the 250th anniversary of U.S. independence. A proposal to increase the government's guarantee of deposits in bank checking and savings accounts and CDs was explored at today's House Financial Services Committee hearing with prudential regulators from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, as well as the Federal Reserve, Office of the Control of the Currency, and the National Credit Union Administration. The chair of the committee, Congressman French Hill, Republican of Arkansas, asked acting FDIC Chair Travis Hill about the idea of raising the FDIC insurance from $250,000 per bank per account to $10 million.
We had a hearing just a few weeks ago on deposit insurance, and we appreciate you and your staff's work with the committee extensively on the topic of deposit insurance, which is of keen interest to the ranking member and myself. I'd like to ask a few questions about your views on the FDIC's reserve ratio for the DIF. It's a pretty straightforward formula that you have a statutory responsibility for. What is the requirement, the minimum reserve ratio?
The reserve ratio is defined as the net worth of the deposit insurance fund divided by insured deposits, and the minimum ratio set by statute is 1.35%.
So let's say we raise the deposit insurance coverage amounts 100 times to what it is now, meaning the denominator goes way up. Normally, for the FDIC to meet its statutory minimum, wouldn't it need to raise assessments as well?
If no other changes are made and the denominator goes up, then that's correct. In order to achieve the same reserve ratio, the revenue coming into the DIF would have to increase.
Yeah, so if it seems like, and if they don't collect the revenue to meet the reserve ratio minimum, that could be put the DIF at some risk. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I think that's a complicated question, and happy to go into some of the considerations. I know the time is short here.
We'll continue the discussion.
Congressman French Hill, Republican from Arkansas, chair of the Financial Services Committee, questioning the acting FDIC chair Travis Hill at today's hearing with federal agencies that oversee banking. Wall Street today, the Dow up 185, NASDAQ up 137, S&P up 16. And finally, on C-SPAN Radio, U.S. Capitol Christmas tree lighting took place in Washington tonight on the west lawn of the Capitol building. This year's tree is from a national forest in Nevada, first time from that state in the history. It's a 53-foot red fir. Here is Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana.
This time invites us to pause and reflect on the many blessings that God has bestowed upon our lives and upon this great nation. And tonight, I'm getting upstaged a little bit by the sirens here. And tonight offers one of those rare moments where we can gather together and take stock of all those blessings. Now, behind me stands the great state of Nevada's very first Capitol Christmas tree, as we've all heard. It stands at a proud 53 feet, and even in this dark season, this tree shines bright, not from just one light, but from thousands shining together. And in much the same way, the strength of our nation is found in the individual, in the small towns and neighborhoods, in places like Elko and Incline Village and Henderson and Virginia City. But all of us know that America, not unlike this tree, is strongest when we stand together as one nation under God, and we can never forget that. We also know that great trees take generations to grow. Red firs like this one require the right conditions and decades of careful tending to rise to their full majesty. And so too with this great republic of ours. Like the fir, the work of preserving this grand experiment in self-governance is also generational. And it falls to us to steward and protect it so that our children may inherit all the blessings that we enjoy today. So next year, as we look ahead, we'll be celebrating our nation's 250th birthday. And we want to remember that sacred responsibility and to renew our commitment to this essential task that we have together. Christmas is a fitting time to do just that, to look beyond our material blessings and to lift our gaze on high, just as the wise men once did on their journey to Bethlehem.
U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson at the Christmas tree lighting on Capitol Hill. And that lighting with a countdown was joined by 9-year-old Grady Armstrong from Virginia City, Nevada. He won an essay contest.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There you go.
On Capitol Hill this evening, and the National Christmas Tree Lighting Ceremony on the Ellipse south of the White House is going to be this Thursday, December 4th. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.